What's up, boys? Today I want to talk to you all about Dragonflight. Obviously, expansion's going to be coming out in a day or two. I haven't made too many videos about it, but rest assured I am excited, and I want to talk to you all in this video about why. So, Dragonflight has been met with a lot of very, very strong skepticism. I wonder why. But the fact is that I think the expansion will probably be better than Shadowlands, and hopefully also better than BFA. I don't think this is completely copium, although I'm sure it's part of the equation, and I want to talk to you all about why I think that. I think one of the biggest criticisms of Dragonflight is the fact that it doesn't have a big flagship system like Torghast, Covenants, Conduits, Azerite armor, Warfronts. It doesn't have, Legion legendaries, artifact weapons, anything like this. And a lot of people are saying that, like, oh wow,
I didn't want any of those things. And maybe I'm just talking for myself here, and like that's probably the case, and maybe that really shouldn't carry any weight whatsoever, but you know, I'm just talking from my own opinion, and I wanted a base game. I just wanted a good World of Warcraft game. And the problem with a flagship system is it tends to kind of make everything else bow to its desires. And so that means that if that flagship system doesn't feel good at the beginning, middle, or end of its life cycle, everything else doesn't feel good. It also means that that content tends to age very poorly, and that while playing that content, doing legacy content outside of that content can sometimes feel really goofy. I specifically wanted a good World of Warcraft game.
oh, the expansion is doomed because it doesn't have one of these. Well, where the fuck were you? These things killed the previous expansions. The problem with Shadowlands was the Covenants. It's these systems. So whenever you go and tell me that there's an expansion coming out that doesn't have this massive flagship system with these obvious fucking flaws that Blizzard refuses to acknowledge until halfway through the expansion, this is not going to be a negative for me. It's going to be a positive. And also, I don't even think that's true. I think the fact is that we've got the whole new talent system. And from what I've heard, and I've asked my chat, I've asked many people, and I'll ask you guys today, you can write in the comments section if you feel the same way, I'm happy with my new talent tree. I am. I think that it's interesting, it's fun, and I feel like they're blue-balling me because I can almost make this really good build, but I'm going to have to wait until Dragonflight to do it, which luckily, again, is only in a day or two. So, yes, I'm very positive about it because there's not the addition of a bunch of systems that are being shipped with obvious flaws to be fixed later for content. I also think that focusing on making the foundation of the game a lot better is really what Blizzard should have been doing probably 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because the game kind of has just evolved in like such a dramatic way over that time. I mean, of course it has. That it's time that they need to kind of come back, pull back, and look at how the foundation of the game is doing and how the actual players are experiencing the game. And I think this is what the talent...
That's the problem with the flagship systems, is they take so many resources. It's not that I don't think flagship systems are cool, but if you start to talk about these things like covenants and all that, they take so much effort to put in and then try to balance and then respond to feedback and all of this, that all of the basics get forgotten, the fundamentals. And then you lose sight. Now you don't have the ability to try to cater to each portion of the player base and focus on like how actual people play the actual game on a day-to-day experience because you're too busy managing the current system. And then based on Preach's interview, the upcoming flagship system.
Talent system does very well, and I would argue that the talent trees that they're adding in, or they've already added in, are more transformative to the game than nearly anything else they've ever done. Usually, it's like with Mythic Plus, if you do PvP, you don't give a fuck about it. I mean, to be fair, everybody does need Covenants and Shadowlands, unfortunately, but overall, I mean, I would say, like, you know, if you're not max level, you're not thinking about Covenants. The thing with the talent trees is that they affect literally every single person that plays the game. So if you play WoW, if you are not even max level, you are still being affected by these talent trees. If you are max level, you get to change and do these talent trees differently. If you're a PvPer, you have the same talent tree, minus a handful of other ones, of course, for PvP talents. But in general, the talent trees are the most transformative change Blizzard has made in the game in a very, very long time. And I think that it goes to show some degree of positivity whenever people are generally positive about them. I think that I enjoy my talent tree. A lot of my viewers have enjoyed theirs. As I said, be curious to hear what your opinions are about it. But I do think that it's a positive thing. Next thing is that, I'm not, like, as I said, this is not purely copium, okay? Like, yes, I do understand that every single commercial for the game just shows people flying around on dragons. Oh, I don't know how fun that's gonna be. I mean, like, you're just going around, I mean, how's this gonna be any more fun than Star Fox, right? I have no idea. But at the end of the day, I'm sure it'll be enjoyable, but it's certainly not something that's going to make me buy the game. But the truth is that I'm sure it'll be fine. It'll be nice. It's just not really something insane. I think really what Dragonflight needs to do, and I've said this for a while, is that Blizzard needs to scale back and think about making the game better. And in order to make WoW good again, you could say, great again even, I think it will take 2 or 3 expansions. And the truth is that I think Shadowlands took some positive steps towards that. And I know this might not be a popular thing.
The problem with this opinion, which I agree with wholeheartedly, is that there is no way to see 2 to 4 years into the future without just waiting 2 to 4 years. When you say something takes time, we're getting there as fast as possible. Every day is a day, and we just slowly churn along. And so, like with the changes to the loot system, until we're in Mythic Plus, until we're in the raids, as a community, whether or not you individually engage in those things, you're not there. And so until you're there, we just have to wait and see. So there are a lot of things that it's like, do I think this could be an expansion that becomes a good one, followed by another good one? Yes, I don't see any reason based on interviews and what we've seen so far that couldn't be true. Do I think that this could be a great initial expansion launch that afterwards falls apart and the next expansion launch they make some big mistakes? Absolutely. I don't see any evidence saying that could not happen, that it's impossible. And so all you can do is wait and see. And there's no fun in that. There's no hype. So when you look at things like clickable thumbnails and all these exciting takes, it's more fun when somebody is talking about why this is the savior of insert game A here, or it's the death of insert game B there. It's more fun. But this is a very reasonable response. Like, just, yeah, I think this is good. Keep going.
To say, but I think that obtaining your best in slot gear in Shadowlands is actually possible. Deterministic itemization in Season 4 actually happened. These are 2 really big positives, and technically you were able to get your best in slot in 8.3.5 or whatever it was at the end of BFA, but Shadowlands is what really made this happen. Shadowlands also removed a lot of the endless grinds like Artifact Power and Azerite Power, and they added cosmetic progression instead, which I think is more fulfilling to players if they choose to engage with it, which is of course an option, which is usually always good in video games, rather than forcing people into doing something. So overall, I think that it will take them a number of expansions to really kind of get the game back on a positive trend, and I do think that Shadowlands took some of those steps, and I think that Dragonflight continues to take those steps. Dragonflight continues to remove borrowed power and instead give it back to the player, and then give players more agency in changing their talents. And I also want to mention here that with the new talent trees, there is absolutely no unnecessary collision. There is no unnecessary friction here. You can just simply change your talents whenever you feel like, and that's all there is to it. And I think that's very, very admirable, especially depending on what happened with Covenants and Conduit Energy and Azerite weapons and shit like that.
Yeah, we went through respecs and stuff back in the day, and they kind of like worked up to a, like if you'd never respect, it was like free, and then it was cost a little, and then it cost a little, and it kind of acted as this gold sink. But what it ultimately did was it didn't end up being something that made the choice feel like it mattered. I had friends who played across multiple specs. It just became something they had to farm for. So I think this new way of like being able to share a build, dude, you got to try this build out. It's so fun, and insert this type of content here. Oh, but then when on raid night, you're going to switch back to the build you already know works for you, or that you've been doing. I think it's really nice. It makes me feel like as the systems start to come out, as I get past just engaging in open world casual content, which the first couple weeks of an expansion, that's all I really want to be doing. But when I start drilling down on these systems, and when Mythic Plus does end up being a bigger portion of my time, and when I have this character set foot in PvP, it would be really nice to feel like I can make those changes on the fly. And it's really nice knowing that I don't have to make any sacrifices now to make sure that I have the ability to try that content later. When I want to try it, I'll just try it. I'll just hop in. And so I'm not like accidentally building a wall between me and any other version of the way I could play this game 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, and so on.
As right armor, etc., right? And artifact weapons even. So yes, I think this is a very, very big positive. I'm very happy to see this, and I think that people experimenting and trying different builds, etc., is the type of gameplay that the game should provide. What I hope to see more of in Dragonflight is making things account-wide. I think that making people farm like different types of systems, etc., where you're it's like a quest line or like some sort of grind. Making players do this on 2 characters, I don't really think is a very big positive. I feel like there is no benefit to the player to making somebody repeat a grind for a second character. I think that you could make the argument.
And a lot of it is, right? So this is filmed from him before the expansion launched. And like, I can tell you, a lot of like, when I hopped on my the first alt I brought over to the Dragon Isles, my mount, I leapt off the ship, and it was great. It was great. There are still some things that aren't. And so like when I kill a rare spawn and it drops some random piece of gear, and so I've got all the things open off to the side, and it goes and drops some crossbow off of Sharpfang, which I have killed. Had the crossbow dropped, that wouldn't help me. And then if I come over and I play on my hunter and I kill Sharpfang and the leather pants drop that my druid could use, that won't help me. And so then you've got this weird friction there when like, what if I just want to play my druid in the open world? I should be able to get all this. I understand it not being tradable because maybe they want to limit the number of sources of gear that are up to 350 to make sure they're funneling people into certain types of content, whatever your design philosophy is. But like 350 is not a game breaking item level, and I did earn it. So letting me use it makes sense. And so there are still some clumsy things. I think at this point, Renown, the account wide is a boost, is really neat. They could have been a lot more aggressive with it. The campaigns, being able to jump to whatever zone I want is neat. They could have been a lot more aggressive with it. So I don't know what exactly that starts to look like. Maybe there's harder modes or something like that, so I can come back through and it's more of like a challenge. So then clearing the story a second time on a second character is a choice. More of the things like choices. There's a Tuskar quest where I get to like tell them a story, and then they say different, they end up telling the story back to me. And so if those things come along, then making sure that my dialogue box notes which one I haven't chose, and then there's kind of a collect them all achievement, so that the people who are like completionists are getting something out of the replayability, but ultimately making that wildly optional. It was a massive step in the right direction. As I start to dive into having a second character go through this, it was a massive step in the right direction. But his complaint, days before the expansion, absolutely does ring true in a handful of ways.
Argument that like it's enjoyable to do through gear. But other than gear, I think that farming reputations multiple times, farming renown multiple times, farming through end-game systems, like things like conduits, covenants, and stuff like this. This is not really fun to do twice, essences in BFA. So I hope that Dragonflight really focuses on creating more content for players through having alts. because this is the way that a lot of people used to play the game, and they used to make alts whenever they ran out of things to do on their main character. They didn't just quit the game, they would just go play another character, or at least many people would. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably remember back in Mists of Pandaria or even Burning Crusade, right? We had our main character, and then a lot of guilds, especially the more serious guilds, we had our main alts. And those are like the characters that you would sometimes, be able to sneak it into the main raid and everything's around farm and, clean up on all the items. I did that a lot. So overall, I think it's a big positive to give people the ability to play different classes and be able to experience different things in the game. See the game through a different lens, through a different light, and, see it through different eyes. And you do that through also making the classes interesting, unique, and giving them different advantages and disadvantages. I think that the truth is that with class fantasy, one of the biggest things that emphasizes class fantasy, and this is an unfortunate reality, but I do think that it's true, is things that classes are not good at. For example, I think that if you look at classic WoW or Wrath of the Lich King, like I feel like in Wrath, like all of the classic trees and like classic classes were like finished. Like everything was like done, finished, good to go. But there were still a lot of things that like warriors were really not very good at self-healing. Ret paladins did not have an interrupt. Mages were really not good at taking damage. And I would argue that's probably a good thing, because it gives each class something that they are also very good at. Like warriors are great at cleaving, Ret paladins are good also at cleaving, and also healing, and mages are good at pretty much everything else. So overall, what I'm saying is that giving people the ability to play classes that are dynamic, fun, interesting, and that they have control and agency over, I think is a much bigger W than a lot of people might imagine. Because thinking about your class and about different talent choices you're going to make, I feel like a game wins whenever you think about it while you're at Taco Bell. Whenever you're not playing the game and you're thinking about playing the game, that means that you're dealing with a very good game. And the more that they have these systems and decisions that players can make, the better the game will be, because people will be thinking about it and enjoying it more, because they can do things. I know that this is a very common thing, or of course everybody can clearly go and just look it up and pick the best build and that's it. And of course they're going to do that. A lot of people always did that. But I think the illusion of choice is still better than no choice. And I do think...
And they still debated, right? Especially if the forums got it from 200 possible builds down to the best 3. They still debated those 3. And sometimes it wasn't a best 3. Sometimes it was, in a raid, we could kind of split it into this build was good for these 6 of the fights, and this build was good for the last bits of the fights. And the differences between those builds might be really minor. It might be a simple talent swap or something like that, or you're starting to optimize for which trinket it is. And trinkets do fundamentally change the way you play your class in many cases in World of Warcraft, as opposed to something like Final Fantasy, where gear is really just kind of a stat stick. It doesn't change your rotation in a big meaningful way unless there's some like haste cap thing, which is they've done things like move to charges they've gotten away from. So sometimes it's like, oh, you got an extra fell cleave, but like it didn't fundamentally change like a whole bunch of stuff. And trinkets and stuff kind of can really throw a wrench in there and see what happens. And so that debate, even once you agree, like, okay, I'm just going to do the top end thing on raid night, but like, what am I going to do when I'm open world questing? What am I going to do when I'm in dungeons with my friends? How did that build change across the course of an expansion? And did I prefer an earlier one? So I'm doing the new one that's best so I can get the best numbers, but we can have that debate. So those debates outside a game even exist for the people he's saying, like, it's fun, but it's not everybody. It's fun, and even when I was in that other group, I still had that same debate. At least I did.
I think that, there are little nuances that allow you to change things around that fit your playstyle or fit what you're trying to do just a little bit better, even if it's not Mythic quests. Like, let's say it's world quests, let's say it's soloing dungeons or soloing bosses for mounts, etc. You can have a talent spec to do that, then theory crafting and building that can be really fun. I think a parallel to this would be the speed sets back in Legion with Agrimar's Stride, where you would have like a bunch of haste and speed, and you would be able to run really fast. Like, that was a really cool meta game, and I hope that they make more of these meta games, because I think they make the game a lot more complete and a lot more fun. And just in general, and of course, I know some people don't like this complexity. I'm sorry, I'm a PoE player. I have been for the past 10 years. I love it. I think it's great. So I really hope they continue this. I hope they focus more on just making the classes more fun to play, making gear more fun to get, giving people more deterministic means to get that gear, and also just making the game feel better to progress through. And we'll see kind of how that happens throughout the patches. It's hard to really place any sort of a indicator on what that's going to look like. But I do hope that they don't just make every expansion, or sorry, every patch effectively a new expansion. I feel like that's very demoralizing for somebody to get like their best in slot gear or as close to it as possible in a patch, and then the next patch that gets replaced with like World Quest gear or like normal mode gear from the next raid. Maybe that's how some people like it. For me personally, I feel like I like to look at gear as a tool, and that tool will allow me to move forward into the next level. But whenever the next level, everybody just already starts on the same place, basically, it doesn't really feel like you're moving forward at all. It just means...
The argument for this would be that it means that people who just hop in late or hopped in and took a break can come back and hop into that next raid. But I will tell you, as having been that person, that also comes with the feeling of, well, now I can't do that first raid because nobody wants to do that anymore because it doesn't drop anything of value. And if the new raid drops better, but the old raid still drops relevant, I might still be able to go find groups for it. And maybe I have a mix of gear across the two. And so, like, I would prefer old raids to be a little more capable of acting kind of like, you know, normals and heroics, where there's something about it that's still relevant, instead of like literally we just build an entire new game on top, where now the quests sit above the old raid. And so, like, why would you ever run the old raid if you don't have the gear for the new raid? You should be basically starting the expansion over. You should be questing and then running dungeons and then back into raiding. And like, that just makes it feel like, oh, did I miss it? Because I thought we were still in the same expansion that I started. I just took a break and played another game or had something going on in my personal life. I didn't realize that point ones were entire expansions. And so, like, it made Shadowlands for me a game that, like, once I disengaged once, I didn't re-engage. And like, it sounds like the last season was really fun. Didn't affect me, because once I fell off the train, it was really demoralizing to hop back on. Easy, not motivating.
It feels like you're getting reset. So I don't know exactly how they can solve that. I have no idea, but I am excited for Dragonflight. I think Dragonflight is... I didn't really want to raid seriously in Castle Nathria or any of the Shadowlands content, and I only raided really at the beginning of BFA, and I didn't even really want to be honest. I just kind of had to because I was still a guildmaster. But in Dragonflight, if my class is fun to play, if I enjoy it, and if I'm having fun, I might try and play the game a little bit more seriously and kind of try out and theory craft all this cool new stuff, because at the end of the day, I love WoW. I have for 15 plus years, and seeing a new way to play it makes it fun. And not having arbitrary roadblocks put in the middle of me and having fun is very refreshing. And I look forward to Dragonflight. I think the raids will probably be fine. I haven't really done any of them. I've kind of held off on doing anything until the expansion actually comes out, because I just want to play through the quests. I'm not going to try to speed level or anything. I mean, I'll level quickly, but I'm going to read the quests and go through everything and just really try to enjoy it and have a good time. I'm not expecting Dragonflight to change my life. I'm not expecting to spend 18 hours a day playing Dragonflight for the next year and a half. I just expect to have fun, play a fun game that I've played for a long time, and I hope that even accidentally I'll enjoy it. So that's about it. I think that, you know, playing other games over the years has really kind of helped me have a much healthier outlook and expectation on WoW and video games. And I just really hope that Dragonflight is fun. But if it's not, there's a bunch of other things I can do too that I also find fun as well. So it's okay. And I'll just wait until they get it right, which is basically what I did with Shadowlands. I didn't come back until like Season 4. So I just hope that they get it right at the beginning. It seems like they've really been listening to the player base with a lot of other small things, with like the 500 mount achievement, changing that multiple times, etc. And listening to a lot of community feedback with the talent trees. So, I mean, look, I hope it's good. I look forward to playing it. If it's not, I'll survive. It'll be okay. I mean, I've been here through fucking Shadowlands and BFA. What could go wrong? So yeah, I'm excited for Dragonflight, new WoW expansion. I love WoW. Hopefully it's fun. That's all there is to it. So yeah, I think they're making steps in the right direction. Obviously, there's a lot more to take, but I'm glad that there's at least a start. So that's about all I've got. Thanks a lot for watching. Let me know what you guys think about Dragonflight. Do you like the talent trees? Do you like the changes? Do you like everything? I'm kind of curious. But anyway, I'll see you guys later. Peace.
A few moments later.
What's up, boys? Today I want to talk to you about Dragonflight, my first impressions with the expansion, and just in general, sit outside for the first time in a long time, actually. It's been a while since I made a video outside, and so glad to be back again. And I'd like to sit down and talk with you all about my first impressions with the game. Now, before anybody goes and gets too wild, I want to say one thing. Usually, the problems with the expansions do not manifest themselves until couple of weeks into the first season, a couple of months into the expansion, then you start to see where the problems are. But we're at that good point right now in the game where the truth is that it doesn't really seem like it's that bad. It's actually kind of fun, if you can imagine that. I went through the leveling process. I'm level 70 now. I've gotten a few pieces of epic gear. I've done some of the dungeons. I've gone through some of the reputations. I did all the dragon riding stuff, and I want to talk to you about it today. But I do want to say that this is in no way, shape, or form a review or a comprehensive evaluation of the expansion. It's just simply my impressions of it playing the game. So the first thing is the actual launch of the expansion. I think that in general, the launch went very well for me. I've gotten relatively lucky with launches. And the reason why I say lucky is that there are some servers that just completely got fucked. This happened in BFA, it happened in Shadowlands, it happened in Legion. It happens every fucking time where there's just one server or two servers or a handful of them that is just completely dysfunctional for the first day or two. And obviously that's bad, but in general, the launch was relatively smooth for me and what I would say probably the majority of people, outside of some disconnect issues that I think in many cases had to do with joining instances or being on your dragon. So the leveling process as soon as I got in was actually very good. I enjoyed the leveling process a lot more than I enjoyed it in Shadowlands and also in BFA. In Legion, I think I probably also enjoyed it more than in Legion. I think that in general the story was, they were all told, like each of the different zones were told separately, but they were all part of a greater narrative. I think also one point where, I mean, this is not really a first impressions, this is, I think, a fucking fact, that the in-game cinematics with like the character models and the rigging that they have for facial expressions, etc., and you can see this explicitly with Kalagos, is way better. It is like fucking insane how much better it is than it was last expansion, and even more so than the expansion before that. You know, it doesn't look as I don't know, as fake, I guess you could say, and it just was really, really good. And I think actually the stories of the different zones was a lot better than what we got in Shadowlands, and I think it was.
I jump game to game, and before he continues on there, I will say that the rigging was a massive improvement over where it's been in the past. This game is still going to be a game that makes its art style very, very, very pronounced, and that is filled with pros and cons. The pros are that it ages very well. Content that is 10 years old does not look as different as other art styles. They age better. You can see it when they're side by side, but when you're just in the old zones with the old items on, you know, and there's old character models, it's fine. It's fine. The downside is when you jump game to MMO day over day, the cutscenes really struggle when they are the in-game cutscenes and you're seeing the actual rigging versus some of the artistic cutscenes that they've been able to do.
It's also a lot better than what we got outside of probably BFA, besides maybe the Jaina storyline and the Drusvar arc, which I thought was pretty cool. Other than that, I think that it's been a massive step up in terms of narrative storytelling, in terms of showing the characters in the world actually like interacting with each other. The cinematics are better, the dialogue is better. I would say that just in pretty much all cases, it's a massive improvement. I think one of the best examples of why I think that it's very good is that, like, you know, whenever you're doing the first zone and there's like this dwarf that's like sitting off, like looking out into the distance, and you go through and you do a bunch of dialogue with him, and then after you finish the dialogue, you unlock a special quest to do for him. Well, the thing is that whenever there was a post about this, everybody responded to the post saying how great it was and how much they liked it. And in general, they knew who this dwarf was, and they thought that it was a sympathetic story in a way that they were able to relate to and respond to. And I think that's really impressive, because whenever I think back to a lot of the main characters in Shadowlands, I honestly don't give a fuck about any of them. I think they're stupid, they were pointless, and the character development was generally awful, besides Denathrius, who was a fucking gigachad. Everybody else sucked. So anyway, besides that, I would also say that just dragon riding throughout the entire expansion reminded me a lot of Cataclysm. I know this is going to be one of my more hot takes. I actually really enjoyed Cataclysm. I think that's for a lot of reasons outside of video gaming, though. You know, like where I was in my life, what I was doing, etc. You know, how old I was.
Yeah, Firelands dailies, when I went back, they're not fun. But Firelands dailies are something that I'm in the ballpark of the same age as Asmongold. And so at the time in my life, they were something that I remember staying up late and seeing if we could scrounge up the money to get a pizza. And those raids and those dailies and like being out in that world, while I don't like underwater zones and things like that, I have a lot of very fond memories of like looking for that stupid camel and doing those dailies and trying not to get hit, but there's like 1,000 people running around everywhere. And I have a lot of very fond memories around Cataclysm as a time period. And that's what's hard when you think back. I agree with him there. I have very fond memories of Cataclysm, and so usually I try to phrase it as like, a lot of people don't like Cataclysm. Like, I understand that, but I had a very fond set of memories through Cataclysm. I was bummed how much of vanilla got overwritten, but that didn't stop me from having fun.
I think that's probably a bigger reason why I enjoyed Cataclysm more so than the content, but nonetheless, I did enjoy Cataclysm, and it reminded me a lot of that, being able to fly around after, after just being part of the zone just right then, actually, with Cataclysm, and I really enjoyed that, and I really liked being able to learn dragon riding, and also, like, collect the little dragon symbols and the tokens that like make your dragon fly faster, and do all those things, and then learning the nuances of it and doing the advanced trials now. I think that it's very enjoyable, and it's just straight up fun. And I think that Blizzard focusing more on fun and just adding content into the game that is enjoyable, that people want to do and interface with, I think this is just such a much more sustainable model for development versus trying to create people that are, like they're logging in every day to do their Torghast or to do some sort of calling quest or some fucking bullshit because of some system that if you get behind on, you lose your raid spot with, or you can't get into pugs anymore because you don't have it. I think that the shift away from that, and even Ian, I think, talked about this in the Preach video, the Mike Preach Wild, by the way. I would massively recommend watching this video. It's over an hour long and it's worth every minute. But he actually even referred to it as the AP era. You have artifact power, Azerite power, and anima power. That was the AP era, and that's basically something that they are saying, this is behind us, we're not going to do this anymore, and thank God for that. What a massive relief. And I think that the focus on just a more relaxed tone, I like the storylines in the game. I think they're more interesting. I think they're more personal. I think that that's one of the things that really has been missing with WoW, is having characters that you feel a personal connection.
They feel very intimate. I'm going back through the zones now. I'm in the Azure Span, going back through and doing these side quests, and you follow one or two or like 4 characters, and you follow them through these little mini kind of D&D one-shots where you're in with this little small group, and there's going to be a reason they're there, a goal they have, something in the way of their goal, and then there's going to be resolution. And that resolution's not always a happy ending. It's not always a sad one. Like it follows its own arc, and some have been funny, some have been sad, Some have been just informative or have had these little mixes. They've had reasons to have combat involved. They've had reasons to have the various other MMO quest tropes involved. And I've really enjoyed it. And it helps take on the personality of these different people, of the different races within the game. You know, letting the dwarves be dwarves, letting the Tuskar be Tuskar. It helps me feel like I'm part of a world, and that like this world existed and was making its way through Dragonflight with or without me. And this is just my chance to make my impact on it. But that if I don't do those quests, it still feels like there are things going on. The way people walk around towns, the fact that they mention interactions with each other makes it feel like they had relationships from before I even got there and will continue to have relationships after I leave. Which I think lends a sense of immersion that just makes RPGs feel good. Even if you're just in it to get loot and power up, it still feels good to be in a world of Warcraft, that Azeroth is a place that your character lives.
And I think that with Shadowlands, not with Shadowlands, with Dragonflight, I think that's much more evident and it's much more clear. And I think that having the better rigging for those characters helps humanize them that much more, even whenever they are dragons. So yeah, quests were great, leveling experience was great. It was also very fast. I would say leveling was faster than it was in previous expansions, and I definitely appreciate that. I don't really want to go through and spend a whole lot of time leveling my character for the...
So leveling fast versus not fast is something that MMOs really struggle with, because then the question is, if you level fast, why would you go back and do anything else? And so like in Final Fantasy XIV, there's really no reason to go back and do an enormous number of the side quests. Guild Wars, they've made experience so fast relative to the overall experience, and there's nothing leveling-wise after level 80 that they added whole systems on top, and so your experience falls into a mastery system. The zone completion helps give these big loot rewards, and so leveling is kind of segmented altogether. Like, questing does give experience, but you don't do quests for experience. Like, even once you're level capped, the number of reasons, the total list of reasons you would do quests out in the world doesn't really feel like it gets smaller, as opposed to Final Fantasy. Once you're done needing experience, say you have all your characters at level 90, there's very little reason. The list gets really small. It's just because you actively enjoy the active questing, you actively enjoy just having zones feel complete where there's no little icons on the map, or you like the lore, and like that's it. That's kind of the three reasons. They don't pay very well per hour. The experience per hour, if you are leveling alts, is not very good. The stories can be really hit or miss, and it's not immediately at a glance clear which ones on the map are going to be important to you and which ones are not. And so it feels kind of clumsy, and they are an element of how we interact with the world. So for a narrative-based game, it's one of the areas that, for as strong as Final Fantasy is in so many ways, that's an area where they could afford to improve. Guild Wars has so many different like layers and stuff that you always kind of want everything. And the downside of that is that means you never really want anything, because if you want everything, then no one thing jumps out. And so it is very common for new players to feel a little bit overwhelmed. Like, why would I do this? And so what Dragonflight has had to aim to do is, I want to tell stories like Final Fantasy, but I want there to be a reason to do things like Guild Wars, but not to the point where people feel like I have to just clear everything, so it starts to drop out. And so I think the limited number of renowns, pumping people into those, having the various achievements, having the various loot rewards, has really made it feel like exploring the quest lines is an option, but not a requirement. But if I decide to do it, I know exactly how to do it. I know exactly where it is. I don't need a guide. I don't need anything like that. I just go there and I do the thing, and it's very quickly, and I know exactly what I'm going to get out of it. So far, I think it's a really nice balance between that, like, focusing on the gameplay that Guild Wars tends to function, even though their quests do, of course, offer lore, or focusing on the lore, even though, of course, there are other rewards tied to the Final Fantasy ones. I think it's done a nice job of kind of blending the two ends of that spectrum.
18th time or something like this. And I also like how leveling ends, and then you can continue doing the storyline, but you don't have to right away. You don't have to do that. You can go do something else after you actually hit max level at 70. And I also find that very much appreciated. because I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go out and do the mythic dungeons and, you know, fuck around, exploit some mobs. You know, it was a good time. I got 379 weapons out of that. Hopefully Blizzard doesn't take those away from me. So yeah, I had a really good time doing that. And I think in general, the philosophy around providing tools for the player to have fun with, but not telling them how to have fun, has been a massive improvement.
Awesome.
And I've really enjoyed it a lot. And overall, I think the leveling experience has been the best it has been in a long time. And
it's been amazing. It's been amazing. Like the amazing people who have been supporting me over on Gaming Kinda by hitting that member button. If you want to see the full versions of these, those go over to Gaming Kinda too. I'm still kind of working on a name. I'm leaning towards Archive, where we do the full versions of these reactions. And if you ever want to see the shorter versions, those go up on Gaming Kinda when there is a difference between the two. If it's naturally short, it stays over there. If it doesn't need to be shortened down, you know, so just kind of interject where this stuff lives.
it's very overdue. So yeah, leveling experience, absolutely S tier, amazing. Cinematics, huge improvement, the best they've pretty much ever done in terms of, you might not enjoy the actual cinematic, the subject matter of the cinematic, but I think that if you look at the way that the characters are moving and the designs and everything like that, I think that this is also the best it's ever been, and that's great to see. Dungeons, I think that in general, I've enjoyed the dungeons. They're fine. I am a little bit exhausted from, you always, like, this is like a thing now with WoW, and like every time that you do a mythic dungeon, like every trash mob has like 3 separate abilities, and it can be a bit exhausting to do with that, like throughout the entire dungeon. I don't know how that's going to feel on Mythic Plus. I think that a lot of the dungeons that people are steamrolling and thinking are very easy in Mythic Zero, I think they're going to be in for a very rude awakening in Mythic Plus, but we'll have to wait and see. Maybe that's just my own opinion. But overall, I've really had fun playing the expansion. Dragon riding has been a lot of fun, and I hope they continue to make more content out of it. And I think there's one really good way to make more content out of it, is to just add dragon riding to the entire game, and then just let people choose whether they want to use dragon riding or normal flying mounts. There is a lot of value in using a normal flying mount, because you can just simply tab out, jerk off, come back into the game, and you're already where you need to be. Or you're 10 feet out or 10 miles out into the great ocean, and you're dead and you have to take res sick. One or the other, it's either way something that is very convenient. So what I'm really trying to say is that I hope they add dragon riding, and they add a little bit more of those different little time trials and the flying missions around the open world and the old world as well, in Azeroth and maybe Outland, Northrend, etc. I think the entire player base seems to really enjoy, well, almost the entire player base. There's never everybody that likes something, but many people really seem to enjoy dragon riding, and I'll be honest, I'm one of them. I think it's great. There's been a lot of people I see out there. Oh my god, I thought that was a wasp. Oh my god. All right, so anyway, it was not. It was a moth. So yeah, I think a lot of people like dragon riding, and it's been enjoyable. The classes are fun to play. And it really is just going to depend on kind of how things evolve and how Blizzard changes the game and makes it different after the first line of feedback is received, after the first expansion or season comes out, and we really start to see the nuts and bolts of the game, and we get to actually play it to its full potential. I think that's really where the expansions become truly tested, is how do these functions work whenever they're actually put in a competitive environment? How do they work whenever people are using them regularly, and the honeymoon period is worn off? That's what's really going to define whether Dragonflight is a good expansion or not. But I think the actions that Blizzard has already taken with Dragonflight, and the way that they've taken those actions, indicates that they really do want to make the game better for the players. And I do not really say that lightly. I think that in many cases that hasn't been the case, and for some people who are doomers, I will absolutely throw you guys a bone. It is absolutely indefensible to not have the creation catalyst available on week 1 for season 1, and I think it's fucking ridiculous. They should just let people get their tier gear, and then that's that, and it's not a big deal. If you're worried about people quitting the game after they get their tier gear, that's a problem with the game, not the tier gear. So in general, I do think that there are some things that Dragonflight can absolutely improve on. Things like making Soar for Drakthir not as good. I don't really see the value in this. It was very stupid for them to do that, in my opinion. But overall, I think that a lot of the changes that have been made to the game have been made on such a foundational level that I've always said that an expansion, in order to make WoW a good game again, it will not take an expansion, it will take 2 or 3. It seems as though Dragonflight could be the first one.
That's for a couple of reasons. First of all, the modular design talked about in the preach video means that it just takes that long for any features that the devs have already started work on. And then the feedback shows up. Well, you're not going to see the changes until the game's made entirely upon features that were built after your feedback. So any feedback from the launch of Dragonflight, it takes a while all the things they've already been working on work their way into the game. And maybe they can get changed, maybe they can't. And so some number of years in the future, we will be in content that was entirely thought of, designed, and implemented after Dragonflight feedback. And so like there's some amount of just time where you just kind of let it work through the system. There's also just player trust and player familiarity. Being familiar with this new kind of way of doing things, and trusting that this is the new way of doing things, and we're not just going to slip back into AP by another name. They can say it until they're blue in the face that that's not what we're going to do. But for a lot of players, actions are going to speak a lot louder than words. And 1 or 2 actions after years of a different set of actions, it might just take people a little bit of time to believe them.
We have a long way to go. I'm glad Blizzard has started listening, and I hope they continue to listen, and I hope people can enjoy the game and give good feedback as well on how to make it even better. So yeah, I've enjoyed Dragonflight a lot. I've had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun at the beginning of Shadowlands too, and also at the very beginning of BFA, less so with Legion. But in general, there's always going to be that early honeymoon phase for the game where you enjoy it and you have fun, and it's nice to be in one of those right now. I hope it lasts for as long as possible, and I hope that whenever it wears off, we'll at least have a decent game whenever we can actually look back and see what's really going on. And if we don't, I hope Blizzard listens and can improve it as soon as possible, rather than waiting to withhold changes for content later on. So yeah, that's in general the way I feel about Dragonflight. I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about it. But to be completely honest, the sun is going down and it's going to be dark in about 5 or 10 minutes, so I'm going to end the video here. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and I will be playing through pretty much everything on Dragonflight on Twitch. Obviously, you guys see on the YouTube videos, etc. So I will be doing more of that, so I'll see you guys there. I had to end stream early today, so I figured I would do one of these instead. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you later.
I don't know if I'll agree with everybody's response to the game or not, but as the first one that I'm watching, I agree wholeheartedly.